The average American says they need to earn $233,000 a year to be financially comfortable. But in 2021...
Oh, geez. This is going to depend on what state you live in and whether or not you're single, married, have kids. But I guess that's the average. That's surprisingly high to me.
American workers on average made only $75,203 annually.
Americans are sort of looking at how much money they would like to have to be financially secure, and that ends up being basically 3 times what the average income is in this country. And to be essentially wealthy or really successful, it's magnitudes above that.
72% of Americans said they weren't financially secure given their current finances. And more than a quarter...
Yeah, I get that. I would think that would be higher. I think it's like 85.
of Americans said they'll likely never be financially secure.
By the numbers, their debt is lower and their savings are higher coming out of the pandemic, but they're more anxious about what's going to happen next if they have jobs to...
Well, they didn't have anything to do during the pandemic, really. That's not true. I guess there was a lot of traveling going on during the pandemic.
If they're going to be able to have secure retirement.
With well over half of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, many are failing to meet some of their modest financial goals.
There are actually millions of people struggling. It's not something that people want to talk
They just show a video of Skid Row here.
about, but if you are in a place where your financial security feels super precarious, you're not alone, and it's not your fault.
So how did it become so difficult?
That's not true, because 50% of the equation is your spending, and the other 50% is how much you're making, and really you're the one that has the most impact and effect on that. Nobody else is going to be able to determine how much you make more than you will be able to determine that.
To be financially secure in America, and what can you do about it? Let's do some budgeting. Americans working full-time earned a
No, I refuse.
median monthly income of about $4,400 during the second quarter of 2023. The average worker takes home 75.2% of gross wages after taxes and benefits, shrinking the take-home pay to about $3,308. And that just isn't enough to cover the
why even cover the initial amount?
cost of living in America today.
The cost of healthcare, that has skyrocketed. The cost of attending college has skyrocketed. The cost of purchasing a home has skyrocketed.
And all of those things, since being subsidized by the government, have gone up in price as a result of being subsidized. In the long run, it does not help. It hurts. If you're enjoying this content, please give this video a like. Subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I really appreciate it, and let's continue.
Take a look at some of the most essential expenses for Americans. The median monthly rent in the US is $2,029 as of June 2023. That amount already accounts for over 46% of the Americans' median pre-tax income. But most US agencies classify spending more than 30% of one's gross monthly income on rent as being rent-burdened. Meanwhile, the median mortgage payment for a 2,400 square foot house was $1,957 per month. However, a common rule of thumb advises spending 28% or less of your pre-tax income on mortgage payments. For the median gross monthly earnings, that translates to just $1,232.
I'm going to guess we're right around 40% right now.
As we talk to households and talk to consumers out in the real world, especially those, say, under 40, housing is the big issue. You know, rent, mortgage. It is the biggest concern that people aren't going to be able to make the next payment.
Inflation is really hurting individuals having stability in their housing. And I think sometimes we underestimate that if you have uncertainty in your housing, it causes uncertainty everywhere.
Housing is also the reason why cities have become more difficult to afford. Americans said it would require more than $1 million in net worth to be financially comfortable in places like San Francisco, New York, and Southern California.
That's totally in line with what I would think. I would think you would probably want 50 to 100K in liquid asset cash on top of that to be comfortable, because net worth is really relative. You could have $1 million worth of farmland somewhere that you're going to inherit or that you're part of as a family. Like, say you have 5 siblings and it's worth $5 million and you all own the property, but that's technically net worth, but it's not something you can really access at the moment.
Some migration or mobility around the country where some people say, I'm living in a high-cost state like California or New York. We really want to sort of pack up and go to an area that's less expensive. And one of the ironies of that is those places that were cheaper before are now becoming more expensive.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Americans spend on average $690.75 on food every month, according to the latest data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That amount is significantly higher than any of USDA's estimated grocery bills.
I wonder what percentage of that is restaurants versus groceries,
including more generous and liberal food plans. Add the out-of-pocket health expenditures that cost the average Americans $96.42 every month, and you get a total expense of $2,816.17 for renters and $2,744.17 for homeowners. That amount already...
Notice how to rent a home is more expensive and you're also not building any equity at all. You're just giving it over to the landlord.
That amount already accounts for 85% of the median take-home pay for average American renters, and over 82% for an average homeowner. This is excluding other essential expenses like transportation, childcare, and debt payments.
Many Americans are really struggling with just the increase of costs of living and food and housing. Utility bills have gone up. Car insurance has gone up. Homeowners insurance has gone up. And how can they pay for them but also meet other goals that they have to?
Budgeting experts advise Americans to spend just 50% of their net income on essentials, 30% on wants, and 20% on savings or paying off debt.
30% on wants, that's crazy. I'd say 20% max.
See that allocation shifting significantly where people are spending 75% of their take home just on needs, which leaves very little for wants and very little for saving for your financial future. So depending upon where you live and of course your income, many Americans really cannot meet that target allocation.
The Federal Reserve has implemented 11 interest rate hikes to combat inflation since March 2022. But more than a third of Americans said rising interest rates kept them from financial comfort.
Higher interest rates really can stand in the way of affordability for many financial activities or decisions that people want to engage in, and home purchases is sort of at the top of that list.
I probably should have shown this earlier, but check out the stacks from the Ready Player One. This is what's going on in the cities where people are wanting to move to. This is a development that's in kind of my area. These are along the highway. Check this out. But you tell me the difference. What is the difference between these? And they're building up all along the highway here. And okay, so you see these. And then structurally different, but it is the same thing. Exact same concept. So we're there. We're getting to that sci-fi Ready Player One situation. It just has a better facade.
Look at the person who was going to buy a house that was, let's say, $375,000 2 years ago. Their monthly payment would have been less than $2,000. Now it's about $3,400. And it's the same house, right? The only thing that has changed is the interest rate.
Purchasing a car is more expensive. It's more expensive to maintain a balance on a credit card, with the new offers for a credit card, even for the best qualified individual, being at 20.5%, and other people are paying closer to 30%.
The cost of capital is going up very rapidly. And many of the kind of toeholds we saw for lower income households was because they were having access to credit and to home loans and to other things in a relatively flat economy where they still had a good job market. The ability to access credit, both for small businesses and for households, is getting much harder as the financial system becomes more risk averse in that space.
Credit is essential because Americans don't have the savings to cover big expenses. More than 40% of Americans blamed insufficient retirement funds or emergency savings as a reason for financial insecurity.
For a lot of people, just to feel subjectively feel financially better, they need some amount of savings. Say 3 months of your income. That's, for many people, just so overwhelming that they can't even begin to think about it.
More than half of Americans today said they didn't have at least 3 months of emergency expenses saved, including 22% that said they had no emergency savings at all.
It doesn't take unemployment to really knock somebody out of whack with respect
So I put like 78% of people actually have an emergency savings. That's pretty good.
to their personal finances if they're among the many Americans who say they cannot afford a $1,000 emergency expense and to pay that from their savings.
The reality is, if expenses are routinely higher than your income, you are not going to be able to put away meaningful sums. There are many, many households who do the verb of saving. You see money go into their account all the time. It just doesn't stay there because they are routinely hit with a need to grab that little bit of money and use it for some kind of income shock or unexpected expense.
Yeah, so today I had to register one of my trucks that I had no idea was past registration, and it ended up costing me $600 just randomly out of the blue. And I have maintenance issues on my trucks all the time. They'll just randomly, here's $1,000, $2,000, and it's hard to plan for that. And so yeah, I get screwed over on unexpected expenses all the
or
time.
even expected expense.
36% of Americans said they had more credit card debt than emergency savings. According to Experian, an average American holds a debt balance of $96,371.
What is this from? Is this car loans and personal loans and credit cards and student loans?
Which includes several loan products like credit cards, auto loans, and mortgages.
Okay.
More than a quarter of Americans said debt
A little bit of patience would help.
was what kept them from financial security.
Debt is a way of channeling some of our financial resources, and that can be a very effective tool. Many of us are fans of credit cards that have rewards, for example, but if you're not paying that principal or debt off within the billing cycle, that's when those double-digit percentage interest rates hit, and that can then exact a toll on the other aspects of your personal finances.
I don't think people realize just how bad the credit card issue is getting. Right now we have some of the highest credit card rates and we have the highest credit card balances. Americans are racking up credit card debt as they struggle to keep up with the cost of living, and experts say those who earn the least are the hardest hit, of course, because people who are wealthy, they can just pay off their balances at the end of the month, and then they can use those points that they earn to go on trips. Now, those trips and that traveling is being paid by the middle class and the poor, essentially, because the credit card companies are using those profits from the poor and the middle class to pay for those sky miles and vacations for the rich. Total credit card balances rose 5.8% from a year ago to $1.14 trillion. According to a recent New York Fed report, Equifax credit files through June show the credit card delinquency is still rising, but the delinquency on consumer finance loans and retail cards fell, and the auto loan delinquency was flat. The average rate for people with credit card balance was 22.76%. 22.76%. So here you go. If you got a balance of $10,000 on your credit card, you got a 23% interest rate, you're going to end up paying $190 a month just in interest. So if you just paid $190 every month and never paid anything else, you will be paying that forever and ever and ever.
How do we properly address this so that people cannot be in the cycle of just focusing on paying debt and necessities, but can even think about transitioning to that other 20% and creating an emergency savings, which causes financial stability, or even saving for retirement, which is the goal of creating future financial stability in retirement?
The fact that many Americans are living in financial insecurity poses a big risk to the economy as a whole.
There's a reason why we measure and monitor very closely things like consumer confidence or consumer sentiment, because what populates those data points are everyday measurements like inflation and the strength of the job market.
Public policy can greatly improve Americans' chances of achieving financial security.
So, for example, Social Security is the bedrock of most people's financial security.
Yeah, I get that, but I really think that personal decisions is going to be the only way that we're going to get out of this situation, because we can create all these programs and all we're doing is kicking the can down the road. And until people start changing their behaviors in their personal lives, their spending habits, how much they're working, whether or not they're choosing to work different jobs that pay better and look for better jobs, it's really not going to, we just can't fix it top down. This is a bottom up approach. Individual decisions. At the end of the day, the government can't follow me around and tell me not to buy that breakfast burrito at Maverick. They can't tell me not to spend $8 on a latte. And it's those little tiny things. They can't tell me to not buy a car that I can't afford. It's those little tiny things that individuals make that is at the root of the problem. And it's going to be the solution as well.
Retirement. It's not the only source of the retirement income, but it keeps a lot of older people out of poverty. And we know that Social Security needs some reforms in order to maintain its same level of benefits. And then also anything we can do to make sure that employers are offering any kind of retirement savings opportunities, emergency savings opportunities at work, offering employees the ability to enroll in benefits, whether that's health insurance or insurance for life insurance or disability insurance. Employers are a key part of this too, and public policies play a big role in terms of what employers can offer and at what price they can afford it.
Check out Blue Cross Blue Shield here. Health insurance is a huge expense. Blue Shield is down 20% in the last month. So I kind of dove into this to try and figure out what the hell is going on. And it looks like they are choosing, or they had issues with Ozempic. Let's see. Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield is demanding repayments from providers for allegedly falsifying medical records when prescribing Ozempic off-label for weight loss. It looks like Blue Cross is trying to refuse to pay for Ozempic for off-label uses, and that it was only for type 2 diabetes, but I'm pretty sure it got approved for weight loss. So maybe they're getting forced to pay for it, and that's why they're down 20%. Let's see here.
People across Metro Detroit are now facing Ozempic obstacles, among other weight loss drugs.
Yeah, we wanted to find out just how big the problem was, and now our Facebook page is flooded with comments.
Kimberly responded to us saying she had to switch to Blue Cross Blue Shield from Medicaid, and now her Wegovy isn't covered.
We also heard from Jennifer, who tells us she lost 50 pounds, but was then cut from her network despite putting in the work.
7 News Detroit reporter Christiana Ford is introducing us to a woman in Oakland County who just wants answers.
Now this change is impact.
See, I don't get this, because if I was a health insurance provider, I would want all my patients to be thinner, because a lot of health problems come from weight. I'd say weight is probably the number one determiner of whether or not somebody is going to have a lot of health issues.
A lot of people here in Michigan, but one of them tells me that time is running out for her because her medication only has 2 more weeks left. 27-year-old Peyton Scott can't remember a time when she wasn't trying to manage her polycystic ovarian syndrome, also known as PCOS.
Probably since I've been about 15, 16.
And after suffering with side effects from medications.
Stomach pains, everything that you can think of.
Scott thought she finally found something that worked.
Once I switched to that Ozempic, I had no issues. Everything was great.
Great until she went to her pharmacy and found out there was no refill to get.
I only have about half a script left, so in each script you got about 4 weeks worth. So I probably have about 2 more weeks and I'd have to get back on that metformin.
Her insurance company, Michigan's largest, Blue Cross Blue Shield, no longer covering GLP-1 weight loss drugs unless prescribed to type 2 diabetes as of August 1st and changing.
Looks like we're all getting diabetes now.
Pre-authorization requirements.
This decision didn't come lightly. We've been having to talk about it for at least the past 6 to 10 months. And we really struggled with it.
Dr. James Grant, chief medical officer, says it mainly came down to cost.
The prices of these drugs are really, really high. The drug companies are really, we're talking over $1,000 a month.
It's disgusting.
And, we have to, at the end of the day, we have to be competitive. And when your competitors aren't covering them, it really makes it tough for you to be able to cover it when you're trying to make healthcare affordable for everybody.
Drugs like Ozempic increasing in popularity after getting FDA approval for weight loss.
I'm not doing this for the weight loss aspect of it. I'm using it for the insulin resistance.
Yeah, but most
I really
people
don't want to have to go back on my metformin.
But since the drugs aren't approved by the FDA for PCOS, Scott will be left to foot the bill like nearly 10,000 others in Michigan.
The cost is going to probably definitely deter a lot of people. Personally, I don't think I would be able to afford the $1,500 a month that it could possibly be.
That's why she's speaking out, hoping changes come soon.
Well, I feel awful for anybody that is in the same boat as I am. I just hope that they can figure it out soon.
Reporting in Holly, Christiana Ford, 7 News Detroit.
Shouldn't cost $50
We just got a
day.
statement from Blue Cross saying, in part, quote, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan would not cover non-FDA approved indications, or medications rather. If this individual is looking for covered treatment options, we would recommend they talk to their medical provider about alternative treatment options covered by their health plan.
Oh, so that's why, because it is FDA approved for weight loss. Damn, 20%. That's massive.
The household's willingness to work toward financial security is also important.
Ultimately, the answer here is that solutions have to be arrived at the macro level as well as the household level. And so at some level, we all need to try to own our own financial success by managing our money as well as we can across the range of areas like emergency savings and retirement.
Everyone should budget. What we say is it's not what you earn, it's what you keep. And so think about and have some transparency of where is your money going. And then make sure the budget that you have aligns with the goals that you wrote down. If you say you want to retire early, are you saving more to retire early? If you want to put your children through college, if you want to be debt free, are you paying more on your student loans? Are you paying more on your credit cards so you can be debt free? Make sure that your budget aligns with your goals.
There are actually millions of people struggling. It's not something that people want to talk about, but if you're in a place where your financial security feels super precarious, you're not alone. And it's not your fault.
Many people who have really high incomes and a lot of savings still feel financially anxious. So don't feel like this is your fault or something to do with the fact that your income isn't enough. We all have.
Okay, here's the issue, though, with saying that it's not your fault. If it's not your fault, then the solution is not going to be your fault either. And if you believe that there's these outside forces that are keeping you from being in a better financial situation and that nothing has been your fault up to this point, then why change? If you're not the problem, then it's an outside force and you have no effect over it. It has to be your fault. You have to believe it's your fault in order for you to actually believe that you can fix it.
Have to deal with this in different ways. And the most important thing you can do is just acknowledge that and deal with it and not try to avoid it.
All right, thanks for watching, everybody. And if you haven't already liked the video, please go ahead and do that and hit that subscribe button if you enjoy this type of content. We're hoping to get to 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Really appreciate it, and we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.